Welcome, welcome. So before we get started into sort of questions about the industry and how all of you are playing in the cannabis space, I would love it if you could just quickly go around, introduce yourselves and what your companies do.
Should I start?
Please, Finn.
Cool. Hi, I'm Finn, 37 years old, started the Sanity group about 5 months ago. Before that, I was the CEO of Movinga, just fading out right now, starting full-time at Sanity. What Sanity does is basically, we want to bring medical cannabis to German and then European patients. We want to do that by importing it from trustworthy suppliers, have all the legislation in the German market for that, and actually basically bring that to the pharmacies to make sure that the patients who get a prescription actually get their supply. And then on the other hand, we're also researching about all the additional benefits that cannabis has for the customers. So at the end of the day, we're not only sourcing to bring it to the pharmacies, because that will basically be a wholesaling model, but what we also do, we look into products, we look into different ways of consuming cannabis, and also do research on the side to make actually sure that the patient gets the best possible benefits out of that plant.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Chong. I'm the CEO and founder of Jacana. We are a vertically integrated medical cannabis company, so that basically means we produce, so we cultivate medical cannabis, actually currently at our flagship facility in Jamaica. We also manufacture, through extraction, medical cannabis oils and other byproducts, and then we distribute them internationally in federally legal markets. We were one of the first, well, we were the first company to export cannabis out of Jamaica, legally, obviously. I think what's unique about us is, the way we look at the cannabis world is people are looking for alternative, more natural-based medicines, hence why the entrance into cannabis. And so we believe that one should be producing cannabis in the most natural way, and that means outdoors, under the sun, the way nature intended it to be. And that also means that we are both sustainable, but also one of the lowest cost producers in the world. So those of you that are new to the cannabis space, I'd say the majority of cannabis that's moving around the world for medical purposes currently is being produced in very artificial indoor environments. And of course, to recreate nature is quite costly. And so that's one of our competitive advantages. And long term, we're going to be building a brand, Jamaican Cannabis, obviously being one of the key ones.
Amazing.
Hi everyone, my name is Antonin Cohen. I'm the CEO and founder of Harmony, which is a wellness company using cannabis as one of the main ingredients in our products. We have a range of e-liquids for electronic cigarettes. We are also launching a cosmetic line and food supplements. Before Harmony, I was, like most of you, working in the tech industry for over 15 years. My last gig in the tech space was at Hotel Tonight, which is a mobile application. And I switched to cannabis 5 years ago to launch my own company because I think there is a lot of potential in this industry, particularly for entrepreneurs from the tech space, for two main things. The first one is really to create products that can really change the life of people, and it's very meaningful industry to be in. There are extremely high challenge, but also a lot of people that need this type of product to feel better, to feel in more harmony in their life. And then in terms of the business opportunities, it's also a new industry. Everything has to be built, and it's growing extremely fast. In Europe, we are a bit late in the game, but when you look at North America, the industry is massive, and a lot of tech entrepreneurs have been switching from tech to cannabis. So I'm very pleased to be here with you today to explain in more details why the cannabis industry needs you tech entrepreneurs. On my side, I've created my company 5 years ago. We are based in Barcelona. Today we are profitable. We have 40 employees, so there is today a lot of opportunities in the cannabis space, and we need more entrepreneurs and investors in Europe to come into this industry to help to build a sustainable industry, because there is a lot of work to do, and we need really great entrepreneurs to join and help to build the European industry too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fabian Thylmann. I am one of the first investors of Cannamedical. I actively work with them. Cannamedical is the third license holder in Germany. We started in 2016 already, a couple of months before the law change that happened in 2017. We sit in Cologne. We have around 50 employees. We sell medical cannabis products only, so it's a pure medical company. We are selling to roughly 2,500 pharmacies today, and we import from 3 locations right now into Germany. We are the only German independent brand that actually has its own product on the market and doesn't market third-party product. We don't grow ourselves. We also decided not to do that. It was never the plan, because we feel that we have more flexibility finding as many producers as we can that we can work with to have quality product always on the market and not have a dip. I think the biggest challenge today in this sector is clearly sourcing product. This will hopefully change in the next 12 to 18 months. But it is the challenge today that exists to source quality product that is actually useful for patients. And it's a very interesting market, considering the fact that it's very new, very fresh. We are able to start in a fully new market, and that's the exciting part. And that's why I invested and I'm in it, and I'm looking forward to the talk and discussion.
Thanks, Fabian. So obviously, all of you have referred to this idea of cannabis as medicine. Let's dig into that a little bit more. What are the biggest opportunities from a medicinal perspective that you think cannabis can have? Anyone can start?
Well, I mean, if you take like chronic pain, right, which is probably one of the more prolific conditions that cannabis is being used to treat, with this, studies that are out today, 1 in 5 people suffer from chronic pain. So, I think that is really indicative of the fact that cannabis can be used, I mean, not just chronic pain, but multiple conditions. But when your options are Oxycontin or, harder synthetic produced, pain medication that you can't overdose from, cannabis as an alternative is a much more attractive one, right? You can't overdose from cannabis. And so I think that has been, I guess, more common use. But, the real driver for a lot of legalization has been, epilepsy in very young children. And the fact that it's often like the only thing that works. So I think that's very, very clearly the direction of how legalization has come, is through patient advocacy.
Sure.
I think to add on that, what I think is exciting about cannabis is basically when you look at the health benefits and you look at the current research, you're just scratching on the surface. I think there's a lot of indication, and you mentioned pain, you mentioned a few others. However, if you really think about it, especially in Germany, there has been done almost no research over the last years on cannabis, because it was only allowed 2 years ago. So the first preliminary research is there, but it's not yet very conclusive. And I think basically you see a lot of indications, and I think especially from the US, you see a lot of examples on which other areas cannabis might be beneficial. But I think over the next 2 to 3 years, we will see many more additional areas where you can treat medical situations with cannabis than we, for example, see today.
Fabian, what do patients in Germany currently use cannabis for? What are the most common indications that people are getting cannabis prescriptions?
Clearly, pain is number one by far. It's about 70% right now, and then comes MS, other seizures, food things like weight gain and such. But pain is clearly the main one. So we have a medical team that is currently starting to talk to doctors a lot, that teaches them why patients want this and why there's a benefit, especially in replacement of harder narcotics like the ones she mentioned. And it's very interesting to see that there is this compounding effect that cannabis provides to these kinds of patients that doesn't just solve the actual underlying pain, but also things that come from the fact that they take other drugs before and become sleepless or something like this, for example, like they can't sleep anymore or other things. And these are all things that cannabis can interact with. So I think there's one huge potential today, and that is combinations with other drugs. There's very little research on it. In general, as Finn said, the research amount that we have today is almost nothing. There's a lot of old research from Israel and such that have quite good data now. That's nice to see, but still it's all relatively small amounts of patients and studies, right? So you have all these compounded studies that are tricky to handle because in total they have good amounts of patients, but it's all small studies of 20, 30 people. And then you have always hits that go out where suddenly it looks like one study failed, although it's just the amount of people in it, right? That's the challenge we face today. So this is also why there's always these arguments that cannabis doesn't really work or that it's not as good as people claim, but it's just because there is no studies for it, right? And if you look at how many patients have self-medicated in the last 10 years, it just can't stay this way, right? Because it's extremely important also for us to be able to sell a very good quality product that is stable, that is always the same effect for patients, that doesn't change constantly left and right, something that they can't get on the open market, on the illegal market. And I think that's the really interesting part, right? Yeah. This together with the combination of using CBD in connection with some other harder narcotic to alleviate the limits or the issues that the other narcotic has, to combine it together with something from cannabis to have a better effect all across the board. And
well, yeah, on that note, Antonin, obviously Harmony focuses on CBD, and one of the benefits there is that it's much more widely distributable and easier for you don't need a prescription to sort of buy your products in many areas. So on that end, how have you seen consumers using your products?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Actually, cannabis is a plant with more than 400 compounds, and that's what is fascinating in the usage for medical and wellness, is really discovering the effect of each of these compounds. I have a question for you, actually. Who is in this room know what is CBD? Please lift the hand. So a few people here, and that's actually a compound coming from cannabis, which is booming in the US. You can find CBD in many types of products. In Europe, it's becoming more and more used, particularly in the wellness industry as well as the medical industry. So in cannabis, you have many types of compounds. You have THC, which makes people high and which have psychotropic effect, as also medical effect. And you have another compound, which is CBD, which doesn't get people high, which is non-psychotropic and actually can have an inverse effect from THC. And that's also a very big opportunity for Europe today because CBD is legal in most of Europe, and you can create many types of products with CBD. On our side, we are creating CBD e-liquids, so we are helping people to go from smoking to vaping, which is 95% safer. And we think CBD has a very big potential, but we don't know exactly all the usage yet. It's the same for medical cannabis. Cannabis has been diabolized for the past 70 years because of the recreational usage. Everyone knows about getting high with cannabis, and now we are starting finally to discover the other usage in the medical and the wellness industry. And that's why it's also so exciting, because everything has to be discovered and has to be built.
So we're talking a lot about what is available from a legal and regulatory perspective. Let's talk about Europe, since that's where we're sitting today. What will the landscape here look like in the next 5 years? And more importantly, what is the next major catalyst that, as investors, we should be tracking as far as Europe is concerned?
Look at me. It's an interesting question because at the moment, it's a lot about exploration. If you look at the US and Canada, or especially the US states where cannabis is already fully legal, I mean, if that's the way that Europe will go over the next 5 to 10 years, I think it gives you a glimpse of what's possible here.
Yeah.
It definitely is the question, what kind of products do you bring on the market? Is it only the flower? Is it edibles? Is it only CBD? Is it THC? So at the moment, a lot is depending on regulation. And I think at the end, there are 3 markets, at least in my opinion. There's the pharmaceutical market, there's a kind of well-being market, and there's really the recreational consumer market. I guess with the medical THC, and the well-being CBD, you already have at least half of the market. The big question will be the recreational, which is depending on a lot of different factors, and also depending on the fact if the European Union will form a unified opinion of every country will do their own thing, because that really, I think, determines of how the future here will look like. However, if it becomes more liberal or even stays like it is today, I also expect not only product companies like ours today popping up, but also companies similar to what you're invested in, maybe even HR companies, technology companies that basically build an ancillary landscape around the products. And I guess that's also something that will happen once the legalization or the legislation becomes a bit more liberal than it is today.
Yeah, and it's really a, please.
No, I mean, I would agree with everything that Finn said. I mean, I think that, there are, if you look at cannabis, you have to respect that there are three categories, right? There's, all the far left, it's the, the competition for alcohol and tobacco, right? So cannabis as a adult use product is a better alternative for those who want to kick back and relax and don't want to intake calories or have a hangover, all the way to those in the wellness category, which, Antonin is serving, and then, deep pharmaceutical, which is going to be driven, and make no mistake, it's going to be driven in the world of traditional medicine, right? Doctors are, demanding more than ever that there are clinical trials, that there is deeper research. They feel uncomfortable today in saying, yeah, let's prescribe cannabis to a patient when that's not how they prescribe most medicines. So it's one of the biggest challenges that the industry faces. And I think when you're looking to make investments in cannabis, you have to, kind of look at those three categories and then you make a bet from there. But it is 100% regulatory driven. You look at California, and that's the future of cannabis, right? I mean, you walk into a dispensary, which is basically a store for cannabis, and you'll see everything from ice cream cannabis to, flour that you can roll a joint and smoke with, right? The future is very clearly set there. How quickly Europe will catch up to that is going to be a factor of regulation. We've seen that, the medical cannabis space has moved very fast. I mean, a year ago, I think there were less than 20 countries that had legalized medical cannabis. In the space of a year, South Korea moved, right? Australia, New Zealand, I mean, you name it, they're moving very quickly, but you have to really understand that every single market regulates very differently, right? So even though it's legalized cannabis, how have they done it? Can patients get access? And so that's where you have to really understand the intricacies of the markets. And for those of you that may not know, but Germany is definitely leading the pack, right? Germany is the leading market for medical cannabis right now in Europe. And so all eyes are certainly on this market.
And I think just maybe one addition, and I think if you ask how the future looks like in 5 years, my biggest risk is basically that the Canadian companies who can already generate a lot of revenues right now are taking the money and go to the European market before we are ready and can generate our own big revenues. And
That's already starting to happen.
I think 4 of us here sitting today consciously competing with the Canadians, but I think that will be a race that will also be determined by regulation.
Yeah. Yeah, but the regulation thing is a tricky subject. I think it's looked at by many people today in a bit of a too simple way. So I believe that there's a lot of gray zone right now when no one really knows what is okay, what is not. Take CBD, for example. The BfArM has clearly stated CBD is a medical product. It is not allowed in oils that is sold in a store. It is not allowed in nutraceuticals. The EFSA has said the same thing. It is in Europe in general not allowed. You have it just being removed from every single store in Italy, and so on, right? So there's a lot of CBD issues right now where the regulations are very unclear because there is this uncertainty of how it should be classed, and you see this developing everywhere. And so with CBD at BfArM, for example, it has said this already 2 years ago, that it doesn't agree with the idea of letting this product be used in some kind of simple system. And I think this will continue to develop until there is some, as Finn had said, some clear European level legislation that clearly states what is okay and what is not okay. And today that is tricky. And so you have, as a medical cannabis company, which is really the only white way of, in my opinion, of handling these things right now in Germany, you have a big challenge in really making sure all the regulatory paths are met and are set right. Obviously, we can research, and we do that for other products that we can release as soon as these rules change and get clearer in the market. And we're doing that, but it's slow steps, and it will get there, I believe, but it's very, very early stage. So you have a couple of years going until I believe in Europe there's anything that will become legal, fully recreational. I am impressed that the UN has not complained more to Canada, considering the 1961 resolution is clearly stating that what they're doing is not okay. That Uruguay didn't care, I can sometimes understand, but Canada is quite a big step. So this is, I cannot believe that this will happen in Europe until the UN actually goes and says, you know, let's declass this, right? And this is a long process. They are beginning at looking at CBD, which will help a lot. Hopefully they will finally do this, right? They had a scheduled meeting a couple of, 2 months ago that was canceled, that was moved back because they weren't sure yet. So there's a lot of movement, a very interesting market, but this is why it is such a fast developing one, right? And I think I agree with Finn also that the Canadians have a huge advantage right now since they can make quite a bit of cash in their market. Although there's a lot of competition there, right? And it will become an Ohio too, basically, where the prices will drop to the bottom at some point. I mean, they have estimated over 2,000 tons a year of finished product that was going to be available as soon as all their productions are there, which is way too much for this market. And this is where I think also underestimated right now is how the Canadians really understand the European market. They have come and entered it in a way which was very simple and sluggish, and they have made many mistakes. And they have recently started, if you look at a bit the hirings they have been doing in the last 2 or 3 months, they have been starting to pick people from big pharma left and right to see, to place themselves better, because they realize that it's not as easy as Canada, right? It's not the same approach. So I think there's quite some time still to go.
All right, well, you know, it's a fascinating topic. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion to be had around cannabis, but you know, if you want to learn more, entrepreneurs are around, and hopefully we'll be back here next year to talk in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey.
Maybe next year we can smoke on stage.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.